Can you believe this detailed dress can be turned into a clean flat sketch using just a few Illustrator tools? Let me show you exactly how. First, I'm going to bring our dress reference into Illustrator. Now select the dress, then go to Window, Transparency, and lower the opacity around 67%. This lets us see the image clearly in the background while we trace over it. Next, go to the Object, Lock, Selection. Make sure your reference image is selected before you lock it. This keeps the image from moving around while we are tracing. Now press Ctrl R to bring up the rulers. Click and drag from the ruler to create a guideline right down the center of the dress. This will be our center reference line, and we'll use it to keep our tracing symmetrical and aligned. Now let's build the main silhouette. I'll select the pen tool and make sure it's set to a basic fill and stroke. I'm going to start around the neckline. For now, I'm focusing on the straight line shapes first, rather than worrying about the curves. Once I reach the starting point, I'll click it again to close the shape. Now I'll switch to the curvature tool. I can click and drag on the area where I want to create curves. And there we go. If the curves doesn't look right, don't worry. I can simply select the point, delete it, and create the curve again. I'll use the same method throughout the silhouette. I'm following the shoulder, the waist, and then that beautiful A-line skirt. At this stage, don't worry about making everything perfect. We are just blocking in the basic shape with simple straight lines. And because we are working from the center guideline, I am only focusing on one half of the dress for now. I'll bring the shape straight up to the center guide, then join it back to the first point. Done. Now I'll select the curvature tool again and start refining the area that need a smoother shape. You can see that some of the points look a little harsh, especially around the edges. To clean those up, I'll switch to the direct selection tool and round out the points where needed. We don't need to round every single edge, only the area where the reference show a smoother curve. And now I'll trace the other visible lines using the same technique where it's the collar, dart, skirt panel, or any other details that are visible in the reference. The key here is to work from the main structure first, then gradually refine the curves and smaller details. Once I am happy with this half, I am going to duplicate it and create the other side. First, I'll select everything and press Ctrl G to group it all together. Then I'll press Ctrl C followed by Ctrl F. This pastes a copy directly on top of the original. Now I'll right click and go to transform, reflect. I'll choose the vertical axis and click OK. Now I can move the reflected piece over and align it with other center guideline. And there we go. We have a symmetrical base. Now let's join both half together. I'll use the direct selection tool, click on the center point and delete it. Then I'll select the two end points and press Ctrl J to join them. There's also another easy way to join these ends. I can select both points, choose the join tool, and simply draw around the two ends. And they are joined. Simple, right? Okay, now I'll select the curvature tool again. If I want to reshape an area, I can select the point and delete it. Then adjust the curve to match the reference. Next, I'll create the inside collar line using the same technique. I'm also going to clean up the shoulder a little bit. It's looking slightly off. So I'll adjust the points until the shape feels right. Okay. Now I'll do the same thing around the other side of the collar. Delete the unnecessary points and reshape the curve to match the reference. Okay. Now I'll go through the rest of the lines and refine them one by one, making small adjustment wherever needed. For the hem, I'll select the two endpoints and press Ctrl J to join them. Then I'll delete any unnecessary points and reshape the hem until it follows the reference nicely. Perfect. Now let's create the sleeves. I'll select the dress, right click and group everything together. Then I'll move the dress slightly to the side so I have some space to trace the sleeve. For the sleeve, I start the simple straight line, then use the curvature tool to shape the curved area. Once one sleeve is finished, I can simply copy it and create the other sleeve. And now that our tracing is complete, we don't need the reference image anymore. I'll go to the object, select unlock all to unlock the reference image. Then I'll select it and move it out of the way. Finally, I bring the transparency back to 100. And that's it. Our main dress outline is ready to move on to the next stage. Next, let's start adding some colors and detail to our dress. First, I'll select the sleeve and make sure it has the default fill and stroke. Then I'll select both sleeve, right click, go to arrange and choose send to back. This is important because we want the sleeve to sit behind the main body of the dress. Now I'll select the dress itself and apply the fill. And you can already see the silhouette starting to come together. All right, now let's create one of the buttons. I'll start by setting the default fill color to black and I'll remove the stroke because we don't need an outline for the button. Next, I'll select the ellipse tool and draw a small circle. Now go to the gradient panel and choose a radial gradient. This gives the button a nice three-dimensional look instead of making it look completely flat. I'll select the gradient tool and adjust the gradient direction. I want the lighter side towards the top and the darker side towards the bottom. And already you can see the circle starting to look more like a real button. Now I'll select the circle and press Ctrl C, then Ctrl F. This create a copy directly on top of the original as I said you before. I'll make this inner circle slightly smaller. Then I'll select the gradient tool again and change the direction of the lighter area. So the highlight sits on the opposite side. Okay. This little adjustment makes the button looks more dimensional. Now I'll select the button again, press Ctrl C, then Ctrl F one more time. Okay. For this copy, I'll fill the circle with solid black. Then I'll open the transparency panel and change the blending mode to hard light. I'll also bring the transparency down to 65%. And there we go. We now have a nice little highlight and shadow effect that gives the button some depth. Okay, now let's create the buttonholes. I'll select the ellipse tool again and make a tiny circle inside the button. Once I'm happy with the size, I'll press Ctrl C, then Ctrl F to duplicate it directly on top. I'll repeat the same process until I have 4 small circles. Now I'll select all 4 holes and align them evenly. And that's it. We have a clean, realistic looking button. This gives the final illustration a much more polished and professional look without making the process complicated. Now let's create this little keyhole detail for the button. It's look complicated at first, but it's actually really simple to make. I'll select by selecting the type tool and type the letter V. I'll stretch it slightly upwards so it have a taller, more elegant shape. Now I'll right click and choose create outlines. This turn the letter into an editable shape. Next I'll grab the rectangle tool and create a small rectangle underneath it. I'll right click, go to arrange and choose send to back. Then I'll remove the default fill and resize the rectangle so it fits nicely with the V shape. I'll align both shape together, select them, and now we are ready to turn this into a brush. With both shapes selected, I'll open the brush panel, click new brush and choose pattern brush. I'll select auto centered. That way Illustrator can automatically handle the corners for us. For the spacing, I'll choose approximate path. And if I want to be able to change the color of this detail later, I'll select tint and click OK. Let's test it out. I'll select the pen tool and draw a simple straight line. Now I'll select that line and apply our new pattern brush. And there we go. It came out really well. Now let's create the actual buttonhole. I'll start with the rectangle tool and create a small rectangle. Then I'll make a small circle and place it near the end of the rectangle. I'll align the circle with the rectangle, remove the default fill, and then select both shapes. Now I'll open the Pathfinder panel and click Unite. This combines both shapes into one clean shape. I'll select the new shape and apply the new pattern brush. It's a little too large at the moment, so I'll reduce the size until it looks right. Perfect. Now I'll place the buttonhole onto the garment and bring the buttonhole to the front so everything sits in the correct order. I'll select the button and the buttonhole together, group them, and now we can duplicate the whole set. I'll press Ctrl C, then Ctrl F to create the copy, and I'll move it down to the next position. I'll repeat that a few more times until all the buttons are placed. And just like that, we have our all button and buttonholes in place. Honestly, look at how beautifully the dress is starting to look now. Now let's add the draw card. And honestly, there's no right or wrong way to draw this. You just want it to feel natural and follow the shapes of the garment. I'll grab the pen tool and draw a simple loop freehand. Don't worry if it's not perfect. We can always clean it up and shape it afterward. Now I'll switch to the curvature tool and adjust the points until the loop has a nice and smooth flow. Next, I'll draw the two simple straight line for the end of the drawcord. I'll go to the stroke setting and make the ends rounded. This instantly gives the drawcord a much cleaner and smoother look. Then I'll make a few more small adjustments here just to make sure everything flow naturally. Okay. Once I'm happy with the shape, I'll go to the object, expand, and click OK. Now I'll press D to bring back to the default fill and stroke. And I'll adjust the stroke slightly until it's look right. Perfect. Now I'll select the draw card, right click, go to the arrange and choose send to back. This makes sure the draw card sit behind the garment just like it would on the actual dress. Now let's create that little knot detail. I'll select the rounded rectangle tool and create one large rounded rectangle and then a smaller one. I'll align them and place them right over to the draw card. Together, these two shapes create a really simple knot. And you don't have to make it exactly the same way every time. You can also draw the knot freehand if that feels easier. I'll resize it little, increase the stroke, and position it right here, following the reference. Okay. And now we need the same detail on the other side. So I'll select the knot, press Ctrl C, then Ctrl F, and move the duplicate over to the other side. And there we go. The draw card is now in place, and these little knot detail really help bring the garment to life. It's a small detail, but once we start adding all of these little construction detail, the dress start looking much more realistic and professional. Now we can start adding those little details that really makes the flat look more professional. I'm going to start with one of the construction line. I'll simply select the line, press Ctrl C, then Ctrl F. Now I'll open the stroke panel and turn on dash line. For my setting, I am using dash value of 2 and gap value of 1. The dash represents each stitch and the gap controls the spacing between them. You can always increase or decrease this value depending on the scale of your garment. And this is where the workflow gets really fast. Instead of repeating those stroke settings every single time, I'll grab the eyedropper tool, click on the stitch line we just created, and it instantly copy the exact same stitch style. Now I'm going to continue adding stitches around the important construction lines, the collar, the placket, the cuffs. One thing to keep in mind is that not every single line need stitchings. A common beginner mistake is putting dashed line everywhere. But real garment only have stitchings where pieces are actually sewed together. So I am only adding it where it makes sense, following the reference and the actual garment construction. As I work through the rest of the dress, you'll notice how these small details completely change the look. The flat starts feeling much cleaner, much more realistic, and a lot closer to something you'll see in the professional tech pack. It's a small step, but it makes a huge difference in the final result. Okay, now I'll select the dress and press Ctrl C, then Ctrl F to create a copy directly on top. Next, I'll go to the Pathfinder panel and click Unite. This combines everything into a one clean shape. Now I'll increase the stroke slightly and remove any unnecessary stroke that we don't need. Once that's done, I'll place this shape behind the dress. And now you can see the difference. It gives the flat a really nice, clean, finished look, almost like a technical sketch. I really like it because it gives my flat a little more depth. Alright, I'll select the rectangle tool and create a small swatch. I'll keep the value in mind because we'll use the same stroke weight throughout the flat. Now I'll use the eyedropper tool and click the color directly from the dress reference. Next, I'll create a black stroke and set the stroke size to 7 point as well. This makes it much easier to keep everything consistent while we are coloring. Now I'll select the dress. While holding control, I can select the area I want and then with the eyedropper tool, I'll pick the color directly from the swatch. If you notice any unwanted white stroke like this one, it's easy to fix. Simply select the stroke and in the default setting, remove the unnecessary fill. Now for the inside area, I want to create a slightly darker shade so we can show some depth. I'll start by filling the area with the same base color from swatch. Then I'll click on the color and choose a slightly darker beige shade. And there we go. Now we have a subtle difference between the outside and inside of the garment. It's a small detail, but it makes the flat look much more dimensional. And honestly, look at that. It's starting to look really close to our original reference. All right, we are now at the final part, which is adding the gathers. For this, I'll select the pen tool and draw a simple shape like this. Then I'll go to the stroke setting and increase the stroke weight. I'll also change the stroke profile from uniform to the tapered profile. And look at that. It's immediately start creating the effect of the little shadow or fold, which is exactly what we want for the gathers. Now I'll create another gather following the reference image. I'm not trying to make every single line perfect. I'll roughly draw the stroke and focus on following the direction of the fabric. Once I've created a few of them, I'll select all the gathers line while holding control. Then I'll use the eyedropper tool to copy the same stroke style and weight across all of them. I'll continue adding the rest of the gathers in the same way and following the reference and only placing them where the fabric naturally folds. And there we have it. And that's how I turn this dress into a complete fashion flat. The main trick is not trying to draw everything at once. Break the garment down into sections. Start with the main silhouette, then add the construction lines, buttons, stitching, drawcord, color, and finally those small fabric details. Once those larger shapes are correct, all the smaller details become much easier. And if you enjoyed this tutorial, don't forget to like and subscribe and let me know in the comments what garment you would like to turn into a fashion flat next. I'll see you in the next one.